drama, it is a sketch only. It's a very rough outline of highlights, struggles, problems, chances, and so on. And listening to your papers in the morning, I think or I believe that there might be some hints and some thing that refers to the other papers. Let me start with this 100 from 100 homepage. 2023-24 marks the anniversary of radio drama in Germany. The Berlin station started in late 23, but several other stations in the big cities in Germany took up program operations during the year 1924. And this is already one decisive fact when it comes to audio drama history. In Germany, we have had a federal system of broadcasters, each of them with its own cultural traditions. Though the media landscape is multifaceted, we do not talk about one national broadcaster, we talk about several stations, from Hamburg to Munich, from Cologne to Leipzig. Most recently, the umbrella organization of 10 public service broadcasters has launched an anniversary collection, 100 from 100, 100 audio dramas from a century of cultural programming. You see it on the slide, even the address. It is something like a canon of audio drama in Germany. You will find there the legends of radio plays and audio art. Maybe you will miss some personal favorites as I do, but in short, it is a wonderful tool for exploring the history of audio drama in Germany. And just by serving on the platform, you can immediately imagine the richness of forms, of genres, of modes of expression, of topics. And sometimes they use the term game changer for some of the plays, and these plays will also be part of my quick journey to some key moments. And as you see from the podcast-like image, all these plays are presented by two journalists. They chat about each production in a quite talkative way, and then the document can be listened to. But let's turn to the first key moment in the post-war period. The art of radio drama in the 50s is centered around the concept of inwardness, of an inner stage. A central phrase stated, "Speak so that I can see you," which means I see you via the acoustic medium, by hearing you, by perceiving you, and by creating an image of you. Each listener creates a world by his, her own, with the help of his, her imagination, so he, she is a creator. Such a concept of radio play theory dates back to the 30s and was a response to loud propaganda radio plays, to noise and demagogy. Such National Socialist plays would show people in motion. However, the silent, the intimate radio play would show the movement in people. You get close to one's way of thinking, feeling, and so on. This anti-totalitarian approach was shared by nearly everyone, especially by the so-called Pope of Radio Play in Hamburg, Heinz Schwitzke. You see the name to the left. Schwitzke was convinced that radio was a great cultural instrument. He immediately pursued an active dramaturgy, seeking and promoting the original radio play, the literary text written especially for radio. The considerable financial capabilities at his disposal provided an advantage framework. Added to this was the targeted courting to authors. Numerous invitations were issued, intensive correspondence and discussions were held. Many writers soon became close friends with a committed and strict radio play promoter in Hamburg. They appreciated Schwitzke's advice, but also feared the criticism of the Pope of radio play, as he was widely known. The work of the Hamburg radio drama department in the editorial office and in the studio was impressive. Between 100 and 120 radio plays were broadcast each year in the Hamburg programs on medium wave and FM. 2/3 of these, in some years even up to 80%, were original radio plays. In purely quantitative terms, and it can be stated between 51 and 71, under Heinz Schwitzke as head of department, around 2,000 radio plays were broadcast. For Schwitzke, born in 1908, radio was a means of sharing experiences, a medium that could make existential situations tangible, in which the human was encountered. Quotation: radio is a vehicle for the most private address of the individual by the individual, whereby a new kind of dialogue gradually develops from merely one-sided speech with a means of poetry. That's a quotation from the book Das Hörspiel, History and Dramaturgy, published in 1963. 500 pages in length, the work appeared to be a large academic presentation when it was published, but it is better read as his personal, passionate confession. Schwitzke acted very strategically when it came to asserting and canonizing his understanding of radio drama. Repertoire series were scheduled in the radio play program and combined with essayistic programs on the history and current understanding of the radio play form. Numerous essays on radio play theory and radio play art were intended to clarify Schwitzke's understanding of radio plays. He also responded to his opponents. After all, with so much renown, how could it be otherwise? His work was criticized. The first exchange of blows took place in 1960. A new generation of authors attacked what they saw as internalized dream plays. The younger generation saw the exclusively verbal works of art as non-political, lyrical radio plays. And the spokesman was a 30-year-old academic and author, Friedrich Knilly. You find his name on the right side of the book. This is a paperback published in 1961. It is a polemic pamphlet, and the title proclaims like a beacon the radio play, means and possibilities of a total sound play. On the first few pages, he says, the conventional German radio play is a work of word art. Only plays whose stage is the listener's imagination can be derived from this model. On this invisible stage, the spoken word awakens images and figures. In this reality of fantasy and illusion, the conventional radio play does not come to an original, namely real play process, but only to an imaginary and spiritual play. Knilly called for a total radio play, a form of radio play that overcomes illustration, a new form of radio play in the synthesis of all sound arts. The radio play Pope in Hamburg reacted harshly. What's a total sound play? Was the headline of his review, or rather for his slating. A sectarian polemicized against everything that has been labeled a radio play. Knilly obviously has no idea about the practice. Knilly's sophisticated considerations deserve the name charlatanerie. Schwitzke accused Knilly. The young academic followed up accordingly. Over the course of the 60s, he dissected what he considered to be the downright ear witness ideology in a series of radio essays. He fought for a new way for listeners to interact with the medium. This gave rise to impulses that had a decisive impact on the radio works that were then developed in the 70s as the so-called Neues Hörspiel, new radio play. And as a result, radio play landscape in Germany changed during the 60s. Anything goes. That's the slogan for the so-called Neues Hörspiel, new radio play. Just as several social developments led up to the outstanding date, the Chiffre 1968 also became a milestone in the history of radio drama. The award-winning play was just 15 minutes long, but the short play had it all, and above all, it turned everything that had previously been considered important and right for radio drama making on its head. We are talking about Fünf Mann Menschen, designed, conceived, and written by two Austrian language artists, Ernst Jandl and Friederike Mayröcker. And maybe it's somehow similar to what Basic Farewell to the Words told us this morning. These two authors proved that the new technology of stereophony in radio drama really did represent something of an aesthetic and acoustic quantum leap and could open up very specific listening spaces. Added to this was the new radio play language, the reduction of words and images to archetypical basic patterns and life stories, which, despite all the laconism, also referred to the listener's own biography. The experimental and often so-called new radio play was born, this non-linear narrative way of talking and telling a story. With this bravura piece, Fünf Mann Menschen, a radical work of language and speech art, of concrete poetry, and a year later with Wolf Wondratschek's, you see it to the right, Paul, or the destruction of an audio ensemble, and again a year later with Helmut Heisenbüttel's two or maybe three portraits, that was the title, it became clear that everything is possible in radio drama. Anything goes in this radiophonic art form. The writer and radio editor Heisenbüttel had issued these two slogans at the International Radio Play Conference in Frankfurt in '68. And he literally wrote to all radio play makers and radio play jurors, literature is only topical where it is in contact with contemporary historical demands. Only what is made sayable by literature determines what can be said. Indeed, it determines what exists at all, because there is only what can be said. There is no predetermination. Everything is possible, everything is permitted. And my personal favorite phrase was coined by Ernst Jandl. He says that Hörspiel includes two imperatives, Hör, which means listen to, and Spiel, which means play. Natalie mentioned this morning the Homo Ludens. This is play with everything. Running out of time, I briefly mentioned the next key moment, and maybe it's marked about the millennium change. Around the year 2000, we see a new boom of radio play in Germany. A wide range of forms was used by the authors. Authors who are writers, authors who are musicians, authors who work like journalists. The whole spectrum can be shown. We had audio plays which sound like an opera, picking up a lot of pop cultural elements and combining various pieces of tradition to an elusive groundwork. We had documentaries based on sound documents or built by documents in which people were invited to talk about a topic. Free expression can become an indicator of how a society thinks, but it can also expose prejudice and stereotypes. My personal most favorite radio play of this time is Rocky Dutschke, 68, written and composed by Christoph Schlingensief, a performance artist, an activist, an enfant terrible. His radio play depicts a satirical radio show about the generation of former students of the 68s who now work as editors and presenters at the broadcasting stations. And for all radio play nerds, the most quoted sentence in this piece is, "I cannot live without radio plays, yelled by a crazy editor." And the last key moment refers to the age of digital media transformation we live in. Perhaps the last key moment, but hopefully not the last key moment in radio play history. It is currently taking place, and we are the eye and the ear witnesses. It is framed by the digital transformation of our media landscape, by the platformization, and by a decisive change of media usage behavior. Personally, I'm deeply concerned about the future conditions and opportunities for art and radio, for sound drama and public service broadcasting. There is an open letter signed by a lot of writers in which they formulate their justified concerns about art should be made financially possible. And I add that fee-financed public service broadcasters in Germany has a clear cultural mandate. What kind its contribution to society, that's the slogan, that's the brand they have, is or should be, that is something we can discuss later on, because these are my concerns at the moment when it comes to this change and to the final key moment. Thank you very much so far. A lifelong struggle for recognition, that is the title, because I consider radio, and especially radio plays, they consider themselves as the poor sister, not widely appreciated, always the partner of something else, TV or podcasts and so on. So it is the lifelong struggle for recognition for audio art as well. Thank you very much.